Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the official update here on the College Football AP Top 25 poll. We're through 8 weeks. We're on to week number 9, and we do have Oregon, the new #1 team in the country. Very impressive win at Purdue. They won 35-0. They covered the spread, and it's not surprising. They're kind of the obvious choice considering they do have that win against Ohio State. They were ranked number 2. There were a lot of people that thought maybe they should be number 1 after the win against Ohio State, but now with Texas losing, the bad loss to Georgia at home, they are the new #1 team. Pretty much unanimous, 59 first-place votes. You do have Georgia getting the 2 first-place votes with 1 loss already, Georgia losing to Alabama, but it was a very impressive road win for Georgia. They are now the top team, you would say, in the SEC, beating Texas and really handling them by 15 points, leading that entire game. Even with the Carson Beck turnover problems for Texas, it was just a terrible offensive performance. They sub in Arch Manning, they put Ewers back in. There were questions as Ewers hurt. It was just a debacle at home, and it was a Georgia victory there. So Georgia, I mean, listen, there were people saying, well, we saw how bad they looked against Alabama in the first half. Right now, I think college football is pretty condensed, so you're going to see some teams lose to teams we're normally not seeing them lose to or used to seeing them lose to. And I just think it's one of those years where it's like everything is condensed and anyone can kind of beat anyone. Although not literally. I mean, obviously, Oregon's not going to lose to Purdue, but you're going to see just a lot more close games, which is very, very good. You do have Penn State sitting at number 3. They're kind of there by default. I mean, sure, they're undefeated, but Penn State's going to have that huge game against Ohio State. They've actually got a big game this next week. They're on the road, I believe, at Wisconsin. That's not going to be easy. Wisconsin has been very good the past 4 weeks. Their analytics have really improved. They easily beat Northwestern on the road. They've blown out teams like Rutgers, who's not terrible. So this is not that easy of a schedule to traverse for a Penn State team that really hasn't shown me a ton. Going on the road against Wisconsin, and then you've got Ohio State the next week at home. We'll see how Penn State does. If they lose to Wisconsin, that would really blow the whole top 10 matchup. Although maybe Penn State would still be inside the top 10, but it would certainly hurt it. We are expecting potentially a 3v4 matchup, Ohio State versus Penn State. Ohio State had another bye week, and now they face Nebraska, who just got annihilated by Indiana, and Ohio State's going to likely be around 27 or 28-point favorites against Nebraska at home. That's going to be the big noon game. Certainly Ohio State, in terms of analytics, they're the #1 team in the country, but they do have that 1-point loss to Oregon on the road, so they're not going to be, ahead of Oregon or ahead of Georgia, considering Georgia has way better wins, and then Penn State is undefeated, but Ohio State, they are. I mean, you could argue, I guess, Penn State should be in front of Georgia, but Georgia has very impressive wins, and the loss was, you could even say Bama's not as great this year. They're still a really good team, and it's a very hard environment to go into Tuscaloosa and win a game like that. You do have Texas down 4 spots. Texas is very interesting. They really don't have a big win because Oklahoma really is not that good. Everyone made a big deal about that win that they got last week. Oklahoma was missing everyone. Then they get crushed by South Carolina. And they even went back to Jackson Arnold, Oakland did, or Oklahoma did. But for Texas, I mean, they beat Michigan. Michigan looks really bad now. So we'll see. I mean, I still think Texas is a good team, but that was not a good performance against Georgia. Losing to Georgia, it's understandable. Losing at home is a little bit tougher. Losing and getting destroyed like they did, where they were down 23-8 at one point. I mean, they had like 50 yards of total offense in the first half. It was real bad. So we'll see what happens with Texas, but they don't have a big win right now. You do have Miami at number 6. It's typical Miami. You allow 45 points to Louisville. They're probably going to, I mean, I don't know, man. I still think Clemson's better than Miami. They're just more complete. But right now, Miami is still undefeated. Cam Ward, he is a Heisman contender. He's probably 3rd or 4th right now behind Hunter and Genty. You do have Tennessee moving up 4 spots. Good win against Alabama. Both Bama and Tennessee have had really weird years. Their offenses have just gone completely away. It was another defensive performance. Tennessee, I know they didn't face anyone, but normally they've had a really good offense the past 4 or 5 years, and now the past 3 weeks, it is completely gone. But it's still a very nice win against a good Alabama team. They've got a very talented roster, although Jalen Milroe has not been good. Tennessee is certainly set up right now to be one of the teams to make the playoff. And even if they lose another game, they're probably still going to make it. But they're probably going to finish 10-2, although I don't know, their offense has not been very good. It was a good win against Alabama. LSU beat Arkansas. That's a good win for LSU, 34-10. Arkansas, they're not a terrible team. They're one of those SEC teams like South Carolina that can kind of keep games close. But LSU right now, I'm not really buying LSU. But I mean, they are 6-1, so we'll see. They've got a few tough games coming up. Oh, they got a game this next week at A&M. You've got Clemson up one spot. They beat Virginia. Yeah, Virginia scored 21 fourth quarter points. Clemson continues to look really good, and they're up to number 9. Iowa State barely beats UCF. UCF has not had a good year. They started off well the first 3 weeks, and then they really struggled. This is not a good performance by Iowa State, but they are still undefeated. Same thing really with BYU against Oklahoma State. They were 9-point favorites. They won on like a walk-off touchdown. They very easily could have lost that game. But this is just what the Big 12 is. There's no powerhouse. These teams are probably going to lose games, but right now they're both 7-0. They're ranked number 10 and number 11, and they're the 2 favorites to potentially whoever wins that conference. You're going to be ranked 4th overall, or maybe even 3rd. I mean, we'll see what happens with the ACC, but I think the ACC team is going to be ranked 3rd. And then the Big 12 team, whoever wins that conference, will be ranked 4th, and they're going to get an auto bye. So maybe it will be Iowa State versus BYU, but both of those teams can still easily lose multiple times. It's the reality of the conference. This is an impressive win for Notre Dame. They kind of had that weird neutral site-ish game, Mercedes-Benz. It's in Atlanta, so maybe kind of a home game for Georgia Tech, but it's not on campus. They won that game 31-13. They easily covered that spread. So Notre Dame, they've got Navy coming up. They've got Army. They're going to have some big games. But other than that, I mean, Notre Dame goes 11-1. They certainly will be in the playoff. For them, it's going to be about, are we going to have a road playoff game if we finish 11-1? I'm sure they want that home playoff round 1 game. You're probably going to be facing an SEC team, maybe a Big Ten, maybe a Penn State. It'll be interesting. They're definitely in the playoff if they go 11-1. If they go 10-2, they're gone because that Northern Illinois loss is a disqualifier. There are people that'll argue if they go 11-1, they should be out. But remember that week 1 win against Texas A&M, which we really didn't put a lot of stock into, but now Texas A&M is winning all these games. I still think Texas A&M is going to lose multiple games, and that win isn't going to look nearly as good for Notre Dame, but right now it looks amazing. You've got Indiana up to number 13 at 7-0. I mean, they annihilated Nebraska. They were only 6-point favorites. They are loved analytic. Well, I shouldn't say that because it's just we're not used to this from Indiana, and to see where they're at right now, like they're going to be 14 points favorites over Michigan, or maybe like 17. I mean, it's crazy. But Indiana looks really good, and there is an argument to be made. Indiana might be 11, or what would it be, 10-0. 10-0 when they face Ohio State and Columbus. They're going to be the underdogs. I don't think they're going to beat Ohio State. But wouldn't it be something if they were undefeated and like a top 5 team going into Columbus? And that could be like a 7:30 NBC game. And because Ohio State has, well, I guess now it doesn't really matter. I was going to say before the Michigan game, they have Indiana, but Michigan is so bad. It's like Ohio State's going to be 25-point favorites against Michigan, and they're going to be, probably 14-point favorites against Indiana. You've got Texas A&M, a typical performance. They didn't cover against Mississippi State. Mississippi State's been playing better in terms of covering spreads. I think that's their 3rd straight game they've covered that spread, or they've covered a spread. Bama down 8 spots. Yeah, Bama, you lose to Vanderbilt. You lose to Tennessee. You've got a very close game against South Carolina. You easily could have lost. Jalen Milroe not playing well at all, not throwing the ball well. Not a good performance there. Bama is on the brink. They cannot afford another loss. You do have Kansas State with a huge win at West Virginia. West Virginia got crushed in this game. Kansas State was only like 3.5-point favorites. They win 45-18. Boise State falls 2 spots. That's based off of nothing. They had a bye week. It's just unfortunate. Ole Miss sitting at number 18. They had a bye week. Pittsburgh had a bye week. They're at number 19. They're still 6-0. I don't expect them to finish undefeated, but they are undefeated right now. Illinois, I'll be honest, I was not impressed with Illinois. They do not have a good offense, but they did beat Michigan 21-7, and Illinois goes to Oregon. I would imagine they're going to get throttled by Oregon in Eugene. That's a 3:30 game this coming week on CBS. Missouri, down 2 spots. They beat Auburn by 4, came back late. Missouri, they have certainly not been as good as we thought they were going to be this year. Very impressive win for SMU. They beat Stanford by 30. They were only 15-point favorites, so easily won that game. And SMU looks really, really good right now, and they've got a very favorable schedule. Army is still at number 23. They beat East Carolina easily. Navy crushed Charlotte. They're at number 24. And then Vanderbilt, how about Vanderbilt entering the top 25? They barely beat Ball State 24-14, but, you've got some big wins. Vanderbilt now a top 25 team, I guess. And then it looks like barely anyone is even receiving. Is this the AP poll, or is this the coaches poll? No, this is the AP poll. But it looks like, I don't know why there's only this many teams receiving votes. Maybe I have to refresh it or something. You've got Washington State with 46 first place votes. Washington State's in a weird spot. They have a very easy schedule. I mean, they've been good. They only have 1 loss, but because it's like a de facto Mountain West schedule, they've got more talent than a lot of those Mountain West teams. The Mountain West also has a lot of horrible teams. this year. I mean, they've got a lot of teams that have like 1 or 2 wins. That is not a good conference, but they do only have 1 loss. Syracuse, they're a team that could be ranked if they win this next week. UNLV, and then you've got Duke, South Carolina, Nebraska, and Liberty as well. So either way, guys, that is just the update on the AP Top 25. That's going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.